The disturbing truth is that Americans are sicker than ever. There are a lot of factors that play into that, for sure. But there's something we all do multiple times a day that has a direct influence on our health and well-being, and that's eating. And what Americans are eating now is drastically different from what Americans were eating just 100 short years ago. At some point, you have to use some common sense about your diet. And that was one of the major deciding factors for Christine Muldoon when she felt compelled to start changing her eating habits. Eating ancestral foods just made sense. In this episode, we're going to talk about ancestral foods, their nutrient density, what they are, and how to eat them. As a functional nutritional therapy practitioner, course creator, podcaster, and most importantly, mom to 3, Christine is well equipped and does a great job of walking us through this with lots of encouragement and tips. I challenge you to see if you can get to the end without at least wanting to try one bite of liver. If you have just 1 minute to help us grow this podcast, we would really appreciate it. You can do that by simply leaving a 5-star review for us on Apple or Spotify podcasts, or you could take a second to share this with 1 to 2 friends that you think could really benefit from it. Thanks so much. Welcome to the Daily Wellness Podcast, where you can learn about healthy living and be inspired to take the next step in your wellness journey. I have Christine Muldoon with me today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk to you. I've loved following you on Instagram and learning from you. Very inspiring. And I know that you are a functional nutritional therapy practitioner. Did I say that right?
You did. And man, is that a mouthful.
It is. I was like, I hope I get this out right.
Yeah.
But I would love to hear how you got here. What's your story?
I'm happy to share it. So I started out as an educator originally. I have my master's in bilingual special education, and I was a teacher for a long time. And even when I was a teacher, I remember seeing the foods that they were feeding the kids in public schools and just being appalled. And this was even before I was really interested in nutrition. I was just shocked. And then got pregnant with my first child. And like most things, when you have your children, your whole world just totally shifts. And right a little bit before that time, I started becoming obsessed with ingredient labels. I had read this book called The Unhealthy Truth by Robin O'Brien. And for some reason, that was kind of like my gateway. And the book shocked me. I was disgusted at some of the ingredients in processed foods and really started looking into really started reading ingredient labels. That's pretty much where I started. And I remember at one point, I wasn't eating any foods that had more than 5 ingredients. And then I went home one day and my mom, I was telling her all about this, and she was like, "Oh, you should really read this book. I think that you would like it." And she pulls out Nourishing Traditions. And I kind of, in hindsight, we joke about it and we laugh about the fact that she didn't pull out Nourishing Traditions sooner. Why wasn't I shown this book when I was a teenager?
Right.
But she pulled out Nourishing Traditions. She gave it to me. I completely devoured the book. And from there, it was I couldn't, it was a steep slope. It's just the rabbit hole was open. And then in 2017, I went to my first Weston A. Price conference. And that's when I really got a fire lit under me to start making changes in my community as much as I could. I walked away so passionate about ancestral living and realized that in the city that I lived in at the time did not have a chapter. They did not have an active chapter, and immediately started one with, I found a friend and was like, "Here, you help me with this." And she had already been following this lifestyle for 10 years. So she was very deep into it, and she willingly agreed to help me with it. And then after that, I joined the Nutritional Therapy Association and went through their FNTP program, which is the Nutritional Therapy Practitioner program. And I was the last cohort before the program completely changed. So my program was in-person workshops. We were taught something called the functional evaluation, which is has some chiropractic techniques to it where you're actually testing the body for nutritional deficiencies and inflammation and stuff like that. It was a super comprehensive online course, but also like with in-person workshops about nutrition. Gives you a fabulous base, and I loved it. It was so good. I actually convinced my mom to do it with me. So my mom and I did it together, and then after I graduated from that, they changed it from an NTP to an FNTP. So that's why it's Functional Nutritional Therapy Practitioner, which is just like a big word salad. But from there, I started sort of playing around with, did I want to work with clients? Did I want to work more on courses, creating online courses? Did I want to work with education? Like, what did I want to do? And I have actually done it all. I have worked with clients, and I have created online courses, and I have found that my education background remains firm, and that's kind of the route that I've been taking it more. It's just like giving parents the resources and educating them on the most nutrient-dense foods to feed their kids and how to do it on a daily basis.
That's awesome.
That's my story.
Yeah, I love that. I love how our lives work, like you had these little nuggets or glimpses into kind of what the future would hold for you. I mean, you are an educator, so you already had that passion to kind of share and teach. And then just like that whole tidbit about seeing the school lunches and something you just being like, this is not okay. Like that. I love that. So cool how it just kind of fast forwarded into where you are now.
Yeah. I wish I could say the school lunches have changed, but unfortunately they haven't. In fact, they've gotten worse in New York City, at least.
Yeah, I think everywhere. It's very sad. I know you've kind of had to struggle with this as you have gone on your own journey. It's just like seeing so much advice out there about healthy eating and, all these different nutritional approaches and trying to decide what's right for you and for your family. And can you kind of walk us through like how you decided like this is the way I want to go with my family, and kind of, I guess, give some advice for other people that are kind of trying to wade through all of the information out there?
Totally. So yeah, that's a tough one in today's world because we are saturated with way too much information because of the internet.
Yes.
And I think when that happens, we lose a lot of our own natural, like, internal instinct that we have, or this like gut feeling of like, this is the direction I should take things, or this is not the direction I should take things. And that being said, I think that when I found Nourishing Traditions, there is this incredible wisdom and just common sense logic about the way our ancestors ate. And what I think is really important to note there is that there were these different cultures ate different categories of food, essentially, depending on where they lived. But at the same time, they were all essentially eating the same thing. They were focusing on animal foods. Every culture fermented a grain of some sort. They all would use nose to tail, so they were eating the whole animal, and then they were making stews and broths. Depending on where they were located, if they had access to dairy, they were consuming dairy, but it was raw dairy, and then they were fermenting that dairy so that it would last, so they could preserve it throughout like the winter months when they had no dairy. So I think this idea of eating nose to tail, eating animal foods, fermenting and preserving foods so that they could have them in like times of need, and really eating from the land. Those are the like main principles of what our ancestors did. And to me, it just feels like common sense. It's so obviously what we as a human species should be eating, that the fact that we're relying on laboratories to create food for us, or I don't know, certain diet protocols to help us lose weight. Like that just it doesn't make sense in my mind. Now, that being said, because there are so many different like dietary avenues we can go, I think that we need to realize that each of us is a completely different human being, and we're all bio-individuals. So whatever works for me is not going to work for you, is not going to work for your child, might work for your husband. And as I've gone through this like NTP journey too, I've seen that people have different healing approaches and they take different paths. So some people are going to go the route of diet. Some people are going to go the route of therapy and counseling. Some people are going to go the route of supplements and testing. And some people are going to do a combination of everything. And I think all of it is a journey. You know, there is no like, oh, I finally like reached the end, or I have found the thing. You might have found the one thing that works for you, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for someone else. So this is where I strongly, for my family, this is why Nourishing Traditions and like ancestral nutrition has worked for us, because we also live in a modern world and we're saturated by processed foods everywhere and processed food marketing everywhere. And as much as, you know, we might think, oh, it would be so much better if we were just carnivore or paleo or vegetarian or, you know, whatever it is, realistically, that's very difficult to raise kids up in that. And so this is where I think there is some form of a balance in like WAPF and the ancestral modality of eating. Because, okay, if I want to eat grains, I can eat grains as long as they're properly prepared. If I want to eat vegetables, I'm going to eat my vegetables. I'm going to make sure that, you know, they're cooked or fermented, or, you know, eat raw vegetables too if you want. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's just a more realistic in today's world to eat this way than completely restricting certain food groups. And that's not to say that that's not a viable option, because, you know, I did GAPS with my family for a while. So I know what it's like to say we're on a healing protocol and we do need to restrict foods. So I think it depends on what stage of life you're in and your capacity at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's really wise, like considering everyone's unique situation, but then also having like general principles that you kind of live by, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So can you kind of clarify, like, so what would you say now are kind of the nutritional values that your family lives by?
Totally. So we like to focus on eating nose to tail as much as possible and purchasing our animals from local farmers. We eat a lot of broth. So at least once a week or more, I'm making broth. We will eat fermented foods weekly. We do eat organ meats weekly. I try to incorporate that regularly so that it becomes the norm in our home. Trying to think, also seasonally. So trying to emphasize eating only fruits and vegetables that are in season and from local farmers. And we will eat grains, but I lean heavily towards animal foods. Mm-hmm. So, you know, my kids know that protein is the end all be all. So we're going to eat our protein first before we're going to have any sort of fruit or any like grains or anything like that. And then we also consume raw dairy.
Yeah. Okay. So can you, with the nose to tail, since that is not something that you have always done, like how did you make that transition? Because I think that's really hard for people. Like, and it's been hard for me and my family. Like, and I can kind of push myself to eat it, but then to try to incorporate that to my kids, they're like, whoa, mom, you know,
totally.
Like, you're going a little crazy here. Like,
I know. Yeah.
How do you practically do that in your home? Like when your family's just not used to eating that food and it tastes different and it feels different. And
yeah, that's a great question. So I like to preface this by telling people that the US is actually in a small percentage of the world that does not eat nose to tail. The entire rest of the world eats nose to tail. And organ meats are a very normal cuisine in the rest of the world. And they are considered sacred foods. These are the foods, if you go to a very fancy restaurant here in the US, it's very likely that they will either serve a pate, a terrine, a bone marrow dish. They're going to serve these foods because these are high, or crudo. Because these are high-end, nutrient-dense foods that the rest of the world eats. Okay, but how do I incorporate that into my, my kids' daily lives? So, when we started getting half a cow, the three basic organs that they'll give you are liver, heart, and kidney. And if you know to ask for tongue, you can ask for tongue, but they'll give you liver, heart, and kidney. And for the heart and the kidney, the easiest thing to do is to just grind it up with ground beef and mix it all together. And then you can make meatballs with it. You can make a bolognese sauce with it. You can make meatloaf with it. You can make burgers with it. I think that grinding it up and mixing it with ground beef is the easiest gateway entrance into incorporating organ meats. And what you would do is, for every pound of regular ground beef that you have, you would start with a fourth or less.
Okay.
And then very, very slowly work your way up to, let's say now I do a pound of regular and a half of organ meat blend. Or if you can buy it pre-made, so there's some companies like Force of Nature that makes it pre-packaged. Even some farms, so some farms here in Texas will give you what they call ancestral blends, and it's usually 70-30, so 70% ground beef, 30% organ meat. But that's the way that I would go. And then for the liver, I actually think pate is pretty palatable for most people. And it's also delicious because there's a lot of different vehicles that you can use to eat it. So you could eat it with crackers, you could eat it with apples, you can eat it with raw veggies. You could put it on bread, like toast.
Sourdough.
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways to incorporate pate. So I think that starting with just your basic pate recipe. And then I have to give a shout out to Janine Farzine from Awfully Good Cooking, because she really does a fabulous job of teaching people how to use the organ meats in their deep freezers that have done exactly that have said, okay, I bought a half cow, I have a kidney, heart, and liver. Now what do I do? So that's my resource shout out for organ meats.
Yes, I do. I'm following you, following her. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to normalize this in my own brain by watching you guys eat organ meats all the time, and then I'll be able to.
Totally. And the other thing too is it takes a long time, because I want to say I had my first liver in maybe 2017, but I didn't really start incorporating it consistently until 2016 because I started eating liver when I was pregnant with my second. And I ate it maybe 3 times during my pregnancy. And actually, funny story, I was taught how to eat liver by a Japanese woman.
Oh, wow.
She, it's something that she made regularly for her kids, and they ate in their home. And I had, at this point, I had already read Nourishing Traditions, and I was like, can you teach me how you make your liver? And so she taught me a Japanese dish and how they prepared it. And basically, they just chopped it up really fine and mixed it in with rice and made these little rice cake patty things with it. Yeah, so I've been working at this for a really, really long time, and it hasn't been until maybe 2 years ago that I am consistently enjoying my organ meat meals. It's not even for a while I was faking it, okay, I have to eat this because I model this for my kids, sort of thing. But about 2 years ago, it sort of just clicked, and I was like, actually, no, these are delicious. And when I sit at the table, it's not, there's no squeamish part of me anymore.
You fake it, you make it.
Yeah, right. But the kids, it's the same thing. You just have to keep serving it to them over and over and over again. And the obnoxious part of this is we think, okay, I'll give it to them 3 times and that's it. No, you got to do it 50 times. And even last night, I made heart, and I had 4 out of my 5 family members ate it and enjoyed it. And my 2-year-old, who is like my fail-safe, he'll eat whatever I put in front of him. He was very adamant about he wasn't going to eat it, and he didn't eat it, which is a shocker because he's usually the one who will eat anything I put in front of him.
Right.
But I guarantee you that when he gets it today as a leftover for lunch, he'll eat it. It's just, for whatever reason, he didn't want it at that moment in time.
He's not in the mood that day. Yeah. I have a funny story about liver too. We are not really in the South. I'm in Southern Missouri, but we have fried chicken everywhere here. Like fried chicken is a big thing in my area. And a lot of those restaurant schools served fried chicken liver and fried gizzards. And so I grew up going to those restaurants and having fried liver. And so I thought, I like liver, like, because I was used to eating it. And then when you don't eat it breaded and fried, it's like, okay, well, maybe I don't like it as much as I thought I did. But
totally.
But at least I had a little bit of an introduction.
Yeah. I think for beef liver, the best recipe is Janine's beef liver piccata. That one is so good. And like, that was the recipe that I was like, okay, I can eat this. This is delicious. Yeah, that one. And then
I did too, trying new recipes.
Yeah. And then she also put one out maybe a few months ago where it's the liver and it's like, no, it was you wrapped it in bacon and then you put breadcrumbs on top and then you broiled it. Woo! That was delicious.
Yeah.
Bacon and liver always go well together.
Yeah. You get that little bit of fat in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's the benefit of eating seasonally? You mentioned that.
Yeah. So I've been doing this entire series on like nutrient density and talking about the micronutrients in foods. And this is a perfect question as to like why we want to eat. The reason why we want to eat seasonally is because of the nutrients in the food. So when we are eating, I'll just use a strawberry as an example, but so when you're eating a strawberry in June versus in December, the strawberry is meant to grow in June, and that's when all of the nutrients are the strongest in the fruit, and they're the most bioavailable, and it's when it's the most delicious. Like this food is meant to be eaten at that time, versus eating a strawberry in December that has probably been artificially ripened, has probably had some form of chemical on it to like help it grow because it's unnatural for a strawberry to be growing in December. And you can even tell a truly ripe, like properly grown strawberry is red on the inside, not white. And we've just been so conditioned to like, oh yeah, strawberries are white on the inside. No, actually they're not. And that's not a strawberry in season. And this goes with any food, even animal foods. So animals are traditionally harvested in the fall. And this is because they have the spring and the summer to eat all of those like super nutrient rich grasses that are high in the sugars that are then being converted into energy and protein in the cows or the lamb or whatever, animal you're eating. So eating seasonally enables us to access and have the most nutrient dense foods possible, because this is when all of the vitamins and minerals are the most concentrated in these either fruits and vegetables or animals. And because our food system is so globalized right now, we've sort of like come away with that. Like, we can have strawberries in December if we want them. And you can have any cut of beef year round versus like, okay, the fall is when we're harvesting the cows and the summertime is when you harvest chickens.
That makes a lot of sense. I've been enjoying your series on kind of just explaining the difference between like healthy food, so to speak, and nutrient dense food.
Yeah, that's a fun one. I always recommend people just go onto Google, type in healthy foods and see what pops up, because it's literally propaganda. The internet will tell you healthy foods are fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds. And yes, that's not saying those aren't healthy. They are healthy, but they are not the foods that are richest in nutrients, which are the vitamins and minerals. If you were to compare a beef liver gram for gram versus a piece of broccoli gram for gram, the beef liver has, way more vitamins and minerals. It has the vitamin A, it has the B vitamins, it has zinc, it has iron, it has choline, it has, has way more than a broccoli. And that's not even taking into account bioavailability. That's not even discussing the fact that, molecularly speaking, a beef liver, when you break it down into the amino acids, is easier for our body to absorb and digest than the broccoli, which has the cellulose on the outside, which is hard for our body, impossible for our body to break down. Can your body make any of the conversions needed when eating the broccoli to turn those vitamins and minerals into available nutrients for whatever bodily processes you need?
Yeah. So those nutrient-dense foods are the ones that we should be focusing on for our family, like on a daily basis.
Yeah, as much as possible. And I mean, it's so funny because I had a chart on there that listed the top 4, and the top 4 were organ meats, shellfish, fatty fish, lean fish.
Yep.
And these are foods that a lot of people don't eat. So if we can find ways to incorporate those more, I think it's better for growing kids and their development. And us in general for vitality and health. And
what kind of differences did you notice in yourself when you started eating that way?
I would say definitely energy, clearer skin, and then actually just like a weight stability.
Mm-hmm.
So a stability in my frame and the way my frame looks. I am a fairly small person, but even when I was in high school and college, and I was eating 100% processed foods, eating from like the cafeteria and stuff like that, I had added weight on me. And I'm a very small person already. So like this is kind of a weird thing to say that like I've noticed. But I can definitely tell I have a more stable body frame.
I think another hard part of this is just the cooking aspect of it for people, because eating this way, you have to cook more. It's just like, I think for me, it's been like a reset of expectations of, we've kind of done ourselves harm by, the standard American diet and shopping at typical grocery stores where everything is so convenience minded, where we don't have to spend a lot of time cooking if we don't want to, and if we are going to switch to nutrient dense foods, like there's going to be more time in the kitchen involved. And I think it's sometimes intimidating, like from a time aspect, from a skill aspect. So have you just kind of incorporated that into your daily routine? I know for me, I always loved cooking. So I didn't mind the time in the kitchen aspect of it, but it did take some new skill development for me to learn how to cook new foods, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. It is very intimidating, especially for someone who is not used to cooking. And I mean, I never cooked growing up. I was never taught how to cook. I was never really taught anything in the kitchen, to be honest. So I sort of just learned on the fly. And even to this day, I always wonder, like, I could use some knife skill classes, or like there's a few like basic techniques that I could benefit from learning. I think that doing it over and over again is what really helps, is just practice.
And you can learn.
Yeah. Oh, you definitely can. The more you practice, the easier it becomes, the more second nature it becomes. And also I don't think that there's anything wrong with like making mistakes in the kitchen, because that is how you learn. So, I've burnt and fried and, ruined many a dish. The one thing I can say that I am not confident in is baking. And that's mostly because, at least with cooking, you have the freedom of just adding in a little bit of that, not really measuring things. You can usually get by and it's okay. But with baking, you have to be so precise, and that's not really my forte.
Yeah, I agree. I am the exact same way.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you really wish just every mom knew?
Just don't give up. Because even if you make a meal that your kids don't eat one day, it doesn't mean that they're also not going to eat it the next day. So I would encourage moms out there to keep trying and not get discouraged. And if you can find community with even one other mom to even share meals with, or recipes, or ideas, that way you're not feeling so isolated. And then if you feel like you have the capacity, look into Nourishing Traditions more, look into feeding your kids more nutrient-dense foods, because the foods that are out there right now and the way that the world is feeding our kids is life-sucking. And I think that it's our duty as parents to do the best that we can and raise them in the healthiest way possible. And that might be harder at the beginning if you're new to this and you're learning about it. But I think that we owe it to the future generation, to the health of the future generations, that, yeah, we really do our best to look into more holistic eating and holistic living methods.
Yeah, beautifully said. I have 3 questions that I always ask my guests. And the first one is, what healthy living resource would you recommend? And I wondered if you would share about some of your resources and your podcast.
Yeah, sure. So if you're just starting out, I do think Nourishing Traditions is one of the best books to start out with. If you are already a little bit deeper into this, there is a book called Deep Nutrition, and it's a little more dense. It's by Dr. Kate Shanahan, but that one will really break down nutrients and how they work in the body. There's also recipes and menu plans in the back of that book, so I really, really recommend that one. I have a podcast called Modern Ancestral Mamas, and we talk a lot about all of these subjects, feeding your kids, how to source foods. We've had a lot of different guests on there discussing a lot of conversations around homeschooling, raising your kids, nutrition, fertility, things like that.
Do you have a course that people could check out?
Yes. Thank you for that. So if you are a parent that is starting solids with your baby, because that's, if you can catch them young, that's the best time to start. But this course is designed for parents with kids between the ages of 0 and 2 years of age. And we dive deep into the best first foods, how you know your child is developmentally ready. We talk about the difference between gagging and choking. And in this course, I created it with a pediatric occupational feeding therapist. So her specialty is talking about oral motor development and how all of that ties into texture windows and flavor windows and incorporating foods and doing it safely. I highly, highly actually recommend this course. It's fabulous. And it has an accompanying cookbook that goes with it. And the cookbook anyone can purchase, even if you haven't bought the course. And then if you're completely new to this style of living, I have a course called Real Food, Real Families, and it helps guide families into making the transition from a processed food standard American diet over to just real whole foods. We talk about picky eating. We talk about what to stock your pantry with. It comes with 5 weeks worth of meal plans, breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks. It's actually a very comprehensive course for anyone who's starting out for the first time with this.
That's awesome. I didn't even know to look for that 10 years ago when we were trying to change the way we were eating.
I know.
I wish that I had known about something like that.
Totally. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. And what would you say is your favorite healthy snack?
If I had to pick a smoothie, so lately I've been making smoothies with, thankfully, I've been very blessed. I have access to colostrum. So a base of colostrum and kefir with lots of raw egg yolks. And then I'll usually put in a frozen fruit and a fat of some sort, whether that's cream or coconut oil or something like that. And then just blend it up and yeah.
Yeah, sounds awesome. And who would you love to see on the Daily Wellness Podcast?
I think that you should have Janine Farzine next.
Yeah,
if you're interested in this organ meat conversation, you should definitely have her on.
Yeah, she is amazing.
Yeah,
yeah,
she really is. She's very knowledgeable for sure.
I saw her. She was talking about recently. She had developed a cold sore. This was really recently on her Instagram. So she was talking about, she was trying to ward that off by drinking all the bone broth and things, and then she's just showed this picture of chicken feet that she's like, and I served these chicken feet, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I can do like chicken feet for my broth, but I'm gonna like make chicken feet and put it in front of my family and just see what they say.
Totally right. That's a whole new level.
Right, I know, it's next level.
I have not gotten to that level at all. That's for sure. When she eats those chicken feet, I'm just like, oh, okay, maybe one day.
I know, that's me too. But yes, I love it. Thanks so much for your time. I love this conversation so much.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. I loved being able to chat with you and help out your listeners.
Thanks for listening to today's episode on the Daily Wellness Podcast. We hope that you found it helpful for your own wellness journey. And if so, we'd love for you to leave a review. Then come back and listen for review shoutouts on upcoming episodes. For more information, check out the show notes and connect with us on our website, dailywellnesscommunity.com.